generosity, and kindness are greatly multiplied during this period. There's an initiative with FPMT to collect the 6-syllable mantra of Avalokiteshvara, aiming for 100 million recitations. So Manoshi has posted a little bit about that on our website, and if you're curious about joining in, you are welcome to check that out. Connected with that initiative, there is a beautiful prayer that in Tibetan is called the pith, which is a prayer of praise to Avalokiteshvara. It's a really beautiful prayer composed by the 7th Dalai Lama and really a teaching in and of itself. So the oral transmission of this prayer, Geshe will give on Sunday the 31st at 10 a.m. Sunday the 31st at 10 a.m., which is the most important of all of these days of the Holy Sagadawa period. So it's an opportunity to receive the oral transmission of that prayer, as well as to receive or renew the Bodhisattva vows. So Geshe will provide both of those, in addition to our regularly scheduled Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra teachings on Sunday the 31st. In terms of how things are shaping up after that, on the 14th of June, which is a Sunday, if you are in the Greater Toronto area, we encourage you to come out to Burlington to the library to participate, but it will also be streamed for all of our friends who live further afield. It will be the White Chakra Samvara, or the White Haruka Longevity Initiation. This can be taken in as a full form, but also as a blessing, so everybody is welcome. Geshe will explain during the ceremony how to receive this in different ways. So that is kind of our big event for the summer. And as the summer goes on, we'll be continuing with, on the 27th of June, the Vajra Bhairav commentary. So that's Saturday, the last Saturday in June, the 27th. And continuing with the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra for, I think, about another 6 weeks. And then we'll go to the Bhavana Krama, the stages of meditation by Kamalashila. Geshe is hoping that we are able to finish recognizing my mother, a profound song of the view, in the coming weeks. Once that's finished, as our side topic, his plan is to do the Bhakta praise, this praise to Avalokiteshvara that I just mentioned. There's some commentaries on that, so he'd like to share some teachings on that. We also, for those of you who don't know, we have the book group, we have morning meditation sessions, we have puja or chanted meditation and visualization sessions. These are all part of our program, so if you want to learn more about that, register for our newsletter. On that note, I won't take up any more of your time. Please grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, make yourselves comfortable. I'll invite Geshe down, and we will get started momentarily. So greetings and salutations. Can everybody hear me clearly? Okay, great. We'll do a sound check for Geshe as well.
Yeah, congratulations.
And can you hear Geshe clearly? And it looks like the picture, the video is okay. So let's get started.
Oh yeah, this way.
Oh, jisungi.
Oh, ta chiru congratulations to tane kiwo to tane ta yabo yos.
So greetings to all Dharma friends. Geshe hopes that you are all happy, and he hopes that all of your endeavors are unfolding nicely.
Ta roro sosol te cha chiwo te ta karsekare ani karsekare no lumba kumaji yo bali chota ten digitne cha chegare tani te lapal yo be ka tela kaze tata ta kiwo do pawa yo baji taso kares.
So while we have this precious basis, right, this basis of our human rebirth, which is like finding ourselves on an island of jewels, then we want to make sure that we make the most of this opportunity, that we don't return empty-handed.
Ta ngaroso kiwo do kiwo ma kiwo ta kiwo yo do mayo se da so shlo gel re ma ta no ani ta sono to la tene ta zo yuwa chi ta ke.
Another thing to understand is that whether happiness arises within us or not is not primarily determined by external conditions, right? Those are not the primary thing. Actually, it is mainly by something internal, by our way of thinking.
Ta tandiji ta sono to ya te montra yoga to ya to tani son yoga shul ta to ya ta den dele yoga chi ta ro yo mares.
So then the way of thinking is very important, and that means that changing or transforming our way of thinking is something that we need to do. And in terms of transforming our way of thinking, our mind, there is no basis superior to this human form that we have right now.
Ta ruru soso peji ya bo to na kibo ta kibo ya rewa chisa zo de ani gewa to geile senji yete de de yares.
So then if we use this rebirth well, then we can come to a good result. And this comes by recognizing what leads to happiness, mainly virtuous actions and the concordant virtuous or wholesome karma, as well as the positive mental qualities that we develop.
Ta kadina ke ta chise nei ta ji ke je ya mares chochon ro ya ra ta ne ta kibo chine de ko ka mombo ya was.
So that doesn't mean, of course, that 24 hours of the day you need to sort of be frenetically always kind of doing this, right? For most of us, we need to have time to go out, putter around, enjoy with our friends, relax at home. We need some time to do those things.
Ta tiso gosen da kaze ti she yo na tendi chi she to yo na tende ki wo man ra ji yares.
But the thing is, if we engage in those activities of enjoyment, knowing that previously we cultivated effort in virtuous karma, in the activities of hearing, contemplation, and meditation, then that reassurance, that knowledge of the wholesome things we've accumulated will help us relax and enjoy those moments more.
Ta lekachi de ta tin shuchi ni terende wa shuchi ni ta te she bala te ne te ne dipile mogi se nyur to ya ta pa me ba zo chala zo de res.
And in addition, those activities we understand act as factors which purify, decrease our negative karma, act as factors which diminish the unwholesome or afflicted minds that arise and cause us trouble.
Ta teyo ta to cheshu te cha cheshu te ta ni leba ti ta nga zo peje to ina ta chi chen le la won ta wo ne nyama nyama peje to tho ya res.
And so, Kare,
mi dipile me wa zo ya.
Yeah.
Senji shi me wa zo ya ta chala ji ya ro wa.
Yeah.
O te. Ta shonji se ta te ji se ge ta da.
Yeah.
Nyama nyama ro so so peje to tho ya ro wa.
And so then in terms of what else, so then in terms of our negative karma and these unwholesome states of mind, we actually have the most powerful antidotes available to us. So as we engage our mind with bodhicitta, as we engage our mind with other wholesome things, these will purify, decrease that negative karma and those unwholesome mental states.
Ta shonji se shomba to ni za wa chi bi shonji se ti ni ban ani ta ni pa kan dis yo me de se ja be ka la. Tiene titi major ke ji ji te Tikari, then detail measure, Kichi, Ota Tenda Shinju Chamonola, Kawan Jipi Kala,
Yeah.
Mejiores.
Right.
Kawan Jipi Metic and Deva Yuzu, Rawa, Kumbas Yuzu. So that Tomo Mache the cure. That's Sipazoto.
Something kawa?
So the Tomo Mache.
Tambo michi. So tambo mato chatsanwa mejogi.
Tomo de Machason.
All right. Okay. So then, how powerful is this bodhicitta in terms of being able to purify our negative karma? In passages of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, it explains this. It references from the Abhidharma the eon-ending fire, which will completely obliterate this world and the world system from the realm of the samadhi of the first samadhi of concentration downwards. So it is as powerful as that eon-ending fire in burning up our unwholesome karma.
Tanda te was me Japia to Damandaya was Tanda Shoju said the Tedo Pejagianes.
Right. Yes, so there are many examples or allusions for allusions, ALL, right? Given for bodhicitta in this text, this is one of them, the eon-ending fire, right, for bodhicitta.
Tedo Nesayapomara was Koame was Tanda Tipe Karajagasena, Dipile. Driver doing pa Somegalela Soban driver number you are touch it the Pile Candijina. Kichi say Tokete, Shoju say Nipachi.
So what this means is that this bodhicitta, like this eon-ending fire, it can destroy even the heaviest negative karmas. For example, those karmas related to the 5 acts of immediate retribution and so forth. And because it can definitely clear through those in even just a short moment when bodhicitta is arisen, it burns through that negative karma like this eon-ending fire. So no matter how great the sin or unwholesome negativity, because of the power of bodhicitta, just in one brief instant, bodhicitta can obliterate that negativity. Oh, right. So that's a part. So I missed that part from this. Sorry. So then karma that will definitely lead to a negative result, right? Like those 5 actions of immediate retribution that Geshe referenced. That kind of certain negative result type of karma, if that can be cleared away, then certainly lighter unwholesome karmas can be cleared away as well. And so it is for this reason, right, that the bodhisattvas and all of us, we can cultivate these minds within the framework of thinking about the power of the basis, the power of the antidotes, and so forth, the 4 opponent powers to purify negativity. So when we engage in the wholesome or unwholesome action, that virtuous or negative karma is implanted as a potential within our mind, right, that can bring forth the result. This potential is likened to a seed. So if that negative potential is like a seed, bodhicitta is like the fire that dries it out so it can never bring forth a sprout of suffering. So understanding the power of this, then we want to, from day to day, use our human intelligence to cultivate this practice. So therefore, the bodhicitta, which is rooted in love and compassion, not only does it lead from happiness to happiness in this life, not only does it go from happiness to happiness in this lifetime, but it also leads us to happy rebirth in the future. 그래서
기본이 기본을 대가라지.
교차는 기본이 바로.
뭐다 던지지 장아조 다 메이때 자치 못해요. 장년에 가고 제주야. 뽑아 제주야 니빠 여봐. 뭐시 그요래.
So therefore, having this human rebirth, we can have this joyful awareness that we possess the potential, we possess the capacity, and we can go forth courageously.
다 덴디때 년디때에서 와서 덴디때 막 뭐시니다. 다 기워쳐서 그거야래.
So we can speak of these different kinds of bases of rebirths, right, as bases of the unhappy realms and bases of the happy realms. So we currently possess the basis of a happy realm. And when we recognize that, then these relatively small matters that can sometimes disturb us greatly, we'll be able to put those in perspective, right, and maintain our happiness. 가래? 고당 메버서요? What's that?
고장을 메버서 가라와 녀모또 첨부 던지기나.
알레 러서.
되네. 그래서 봐. 강에 저기 세또 첨부이나.
Yep.
다 고장에 와서 가라마도 올리라고.
Right. But then, of course, when we speak about the causes of unhappiness that are heavier, more subtle, for example, our afflictions, then these are things that can only be removed through sort of deep cultivation and meditation.
당아존들이 지니까래 자세나 먼저 루루치니 레카치아테. 소노토 던져와 간디스도 그건도. 코이시에 가르가르렌도.
So as we gather together then in this mood, then we want to think it's a so we can transfer our way of thinking. So then as we think about this, we can think about how can we transform our way of thinking. We can think about what are the faults of samsara, what are the benefits of liberation, and so forth. And so connected with this topic then, where we are in the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, what it is doing is it is explaining the faults of the afflictions, so we can appreciate those. And so when we have time, what we want to do is go back to these verses, contemplate each of the important verse or shlokas in the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, and use that as a means of meditation. And then for those of us who are maybe new to these teachings, important to understand in terms of the Mahāyāna path, we can think about the base, the path, and the result, right? So the base is the two truths, relative and ultimate. The path is the path of method and wisdom. And the result is the two bodies of form body or rupakaya and truth body or dharmakaya. Di lam di rebe. Karin sa nganso shi dempa ni labs one then lam top down share up.
Lo ta shirani te teba chimbo shiro.
Yeah.
Taba jibolon do kigata tomoy shite.
Yeah.
Ani demba jogon do deres.
And so in terms of method and wisdom, this is for the Mahāyāna path and result of enlightenment. But if we are thinking of the Śravakayana, individual liberation, then it is the Four Noble Truths that are cultivated. And so we should also understand what are the steps that will lead us to liberation, to only or mere liberation for ourselves, and what are the steps, what are the distinct things that can lead us to full Buddhahood or full enlightenment. Important to understand the distinction of those. So now we are going to proceed happily.
juanji chanyo ba lele zo yi so ba chi.
I think I'm going to relax the mind and body, bringing the four elements into balance.
Sonsa zongye kandi ji yin na yo na nika chi la pa ja ni shwa lele zo yo so ba chi.
Whether the thought is wholesome or unwholesome, I'm going to set it aside and I am just going to touch a state of stillness, a state of peace.
Tene bugu chuju lago la tawa noji. Oda ruru soso segi sa segi shuji ni sel pa tani noa kara shawa noa zunge kara shawa ina yo dingo la tani deaji.
So be like a child who walks into a beautiful ornate temple and just takes the whole experience in with their awareness. In this way, observe with a sense of wonder, with a sense of openness, whatever is arising in the mind, not worried about labeling it as wholesome or unwholesome, for example.
No don damara kara shawa ina yo teru la tani dea.
So whatever discursive thoughts are arising, just imagine that these are like images or drawings on the walls of the temple. Just observe them.
No to tedu tela tempi tsoa yung damara kara yung yo na te yung shiba soya.
Also, based upon those different mental projections, observe what kind of feelings are arising. Recognize the different types of feelings.
Jachi bala noji, chi bawa noji, koro ngol tani deva ina. O ta lekam cheya meni la. Ni selpa tandoya.
So these discursive thoughts and their attendant feelings, they're a little bit like waves on the surface of the ocean or bubbles on water. When we look at them and we observe their essential nature, they'll simply fold back into the surface of the water. They arise and fall away.
Dechanda wo shivi ka, kutonda wo shivi ka ina ita dedo jibala. Koro ngol tani deva ina. Nipa meni selpa tandoga ya jibare somano.
And develop this awareness thinking also when thoughts or feelings of attachment arise, of anger arise. And I try to just gently observe their nature. They too will fold back in, will dissolve back into the ocean-like surface of the mind.
Cho mebe nese kandi chi ina ita pake noa nojin zega chusa meba ta jibare endu somano wakazeta.
And also think that as these feelings and thoughts arise, there is this appearance of findability that arises with them. But if I try to pinpoint that findable essence, I see there is nothing to point to at all.
se zuma lumate ke se koro shira ya shu ne ne tsu tatu shi bi shira shu ya zhe de da yong ji zo wa zhe ji de da yo.
So having touched this pure awareness of the fundamental mind and its vastness, think, from this space I will use this potential of the mind to bring forth supreme wisdom. Okay, so we are going to do the preliminary prayers now. So the praise to the Buddha. I don't always know when the meditation ends. He's like, you should have known it ends, but there might have been more, who knows. Okay, so praise to the Buddha. Tenpa chomden de jin sheba dra chompa yanda pa zobe sangye reba dan shazu denpa dewa sheba jiten genpa chebu duwe kalo jorwa lana meba ladami nangi Tenpa sangye chomden de pe jawa shakya tupa la chazelo chede kya suchi ho. Tenpa chomden de deshin sheba dra chompa yanda pa zobe sangye reba dan shazu denpa dewa sheba jiten jemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladon minangi tenpa sangye chomden de pe jawa shakya tupa la chazelo chede kya suchi ho. Tenpa chomden de deshin sheba dra chompa yanda pa zobe sangye reba dan shazu denpa dewa sheba jiten jemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladon minangi tenpa sangye chomden de pe jawa shakya tupa la chazelo chede kya suchi ho. We'll do a short mandala. Saji peke joje meto chan jira linje nide gyamba de sangye jindo me de bowa ge jogu nanda jela jeba sho idam guru ratna mendala kam niryatayami. And now the refuge and the bodhicitta. Chedon sogi chenam la chanchu bardu dani kyazu chi dagi chinye jibe sonam ge jola benji sangye dropa sho. Chedon sogi chenam la chanchu bardu dani kyazu chi dagi chinye jibe sonam ge jola benji sangye dropa sho. Chedan sogi chenam la chanchu bardu dani kyazu chi dagi chenyen gibe sonam ge jola penjir sangye dropa sho.
Honya ta tutani ge shawa ni tenda jongin juise oda ge shule inare ta mage shule inayo.
So then the activities at the beginning, the middle, and the end, an activity that is complete in both the beginning and the end. Whether the activity is one related to non-virtuous karma or to virtuous karma, its power, its being powerful, depends upon all of these being in place.
Mm-hmm.
So then in terms terms of these mistaken minds, right? These mistaken minds that perpetuate samsara, how powerful are they when they arise? We can think about that. So if we just leave things as they are, we will continuously be in a state of difficulties. The difficulties will continue to unfold and unfold. This is the consequence of being on a mistaken path. But if that mistaken path is so powerful as to perpetuate samsara, then think about an unmistaken path. An unmistaken path that is powerful enough to lead us to the supreme state of enlightenment, to actualize a Buddha field, and to lead all sentient beings to that state. And so because this correct path is something that is unmistaken, based in reason, and something powerful, then all of the qualities of that path can be taken to a state of perfection. Lamniden soto. So if you want to think about this mistaken and unmistaken paths, you can think about them as opposing factors. You can think about them as something like heat and cold, right? One cancels out the other. Right. So if you think, let's take a direct example, think about the mind of anger and the mind of love, for example. The more powerful one becomes, the more diminished necessarily becomes the other, because they are direct opposing factors. The stronger anger gets, the more love is diminished and harmed. The stronger love gets, the more anger is diminished. Just like when we increase a factor of heat in our house, the cold goes down, and vice versa. However, anger does not have a valid backing which will allow it to continue in perpetuity forever. It doesn't have such a thing. So not only anger, but in fact any of the afflictions that we talk about, they don't have behind them something that allows them to continue forever or to be perfected. Love, compassion, and the wisdom realizing emptiness, however, they have valid reasonable backings. Because of this, they can be something that is lasting forever. Because of this, they are things that can be brought to perfection.
Right.
Tendu sena like kyune zo meba da boshi kro.
Ja zuya men ro to ya ji aka sa ro tin de
trio tang chu
ya zo so chen yin de yo me che ba ji.
Right.
Ye to le ja de che ma yo me che ba zo ji.
So we gave the heat and cold example, right? But Geshe is qualifying that, saying that although that example holds in terms of when one increases, the other is diminished, when we talk about minds that are able to continue forever without interruption, that are able to be brought to perfection, this is the case of those positive qualities we talked about, it not of afflicted minds such as anger. The reason for this is because the afflicted minds such as anger, they don't have a valid pramana or reason behind them. They are not something that is fundamentally rooted in correct reasoning.
Ota te ota ndiri ngoma nganzo pake ya tori lota ndo vika torando.
Yeah.
Ota lota po kashi ke tita wade to soas. Shomba do control do kanga roji meba chi parendu yeyo roji meba chi parendu chi yarando to chi yarando mata ka.
So Geshe thought about this a lot because when he was teaching an undergraduate class at the University of Toronto, Geshe was invited as the guest teacher. He was presenting some of these ideas, and one of the students, like some bright kids, asked him, okay, but like you're saying that these are like heat and cold, and when one arises, the other diminishes, but yet at the same time you're saying that some minds, like love and compassion, are everlasting and can be brought to perfection, and others cannot. Why is that, right? One of the students asked him, why is that?
Oh,
sorry, that was the other piece I missed. So they both lack inherent existence, right? Both those wholesome and unwholesome minds lack inherent existence. They are opposing factors like heat and cold, yet one set of things is everlasting and can be brought to perfection, and the other cannot. Why is that the case? So the student was puzzled by that and asked about that. Yeah, sorry, that lack of inherent existence was an important point. So Geshe said that this was actually an excellent question because it was based upon kind of a reason-based rational way of thinking. And in fact, this is the kind of way of thinking we should have when we analyze the teachings. So, is that mind in accords with the correct way of thinking or not? Is that mind something that has a valid reasoning underpinning it or not? These are considerations. Listen. So we will leave it there for a moment, and we will take a moment to... Okay, so we are going to begin our motivation meditation, but Geshe is going to start with a 9-point breathing exercise. So just follow Geshe's hands and way of breathing. So block the left nostril, breathe in through the right. Then you cover the right nostril and breathe out through the left 3 times. Put the hand down, and then we begin the next cycle, right? In through the right, out through the left 3 times. And now, in and out through both nostrils. So the body and mind are purified, and in this way we can touch the equanimous, the neutral nature of the fundamental mind. So we can think that this fundamental mind, its equanimity, is like a pure white cloth that is vast and unstained. And in this way, we can dye it any color. We can bring it into the direction of virtue as much as possible.
ri tu su se na yo nyo da chi ju kan ji na yo ta she ki zo de se re se de yo ye ri cha do se de re du so ma do.
So we can think both ourself and others, all 6 types of beings within samsara. All of the problems that we experience are related to the mind. In particular, this way of thinking of near and far that holds some close and others distant, this biased mind.
Yes, the Digi Zata, Iruji, Yawa Meba, Yunsu Zubade, Yeri Chadong, Sete do Tana Jumar, Tana Yagala, Tawangaru Rungi, so much.
So think how wonderful it would be if myself and others were parted from this biased mind, holding some close and others distant. May we be parted from this biased mind. I myself alone will help lead all beings to freedom from this attitude holding some close and others distant.
Tandi se te do tanik, Yunzu Tatuki Dishili Ateatela, Sunjima Topal Taman de Teiza, the doggy chetata, Narosuru Soso Ganga Sedeat, Sunjil do Tobazogi, Sombitoni Shojuzi.
So think in terms of being able to really help sentient beings be parted from this biased mind that holds some near and other far, in terms of being able to lead them to liberation. Only an enlightened Buddha can do this. So I must actualize Buddha within the I, within myself. I must actualize Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Bring forth bodhicitta.
Sonji Ji so Tado Shirani, Deni Jabala, Den Deli Yoga Jime, Zachiga Jime, Nibachiga Jime, Tenuru Sosolta, Dembodo, Yaboyo Somano.
In terms of actualizing this Buddhahood for the benefit of all, it is through the practices of method and wisdom that this can be accomplished. In terms of cultivating method and wisdom, there is no better basis than this human form I possess right now. Understanding this, I will bring forth effort in a stable way to accomplish these practices.
Tandivachi, me to call Individual Goyar Kachambore, Jessimbore, the Mazu Pata Tandaneta, Gain River, Cadina, Social River Riot.
So this aim is vast, right? And there's a reason that this aim is vast, because activities accumulated connected with this aim, they can bring a result of happiness, right? They are powerful virtuous causes long into the future, from lifetime to lifetime, continuous result in happiness. right, yeah.
아니 그 좋은
However, let's assume that we accumulate a virtuous activity, a virtuous cause, using a smaller basis, thinking just about our own benefit or maybe the benefit of just our family members or the people close to us. Even if we bring extraordinary effort, if we toil substantially in that positive activity, because of the limited basis, the results of those merits are like a plantain tree, right? They can just fruit once and then they wither away. Yes, so now we are going to embark on our discussion of the text. So please read along and listen as well as you can. So we are in the 4th chapter. I'm not going to give the page numbers because I realize this creates anxiety because people are using different texts. So I'm going to try doing it this way. We are in the 4th chapter on the 37th verse. The 4th chapter on the 37th verse. And if, while engaged in a violent battle, vigorously desiring to conquer those whose disturbing conceptions, so those whose afflictions will naturally bring them suffering at death, men disregard the pain of being pierced by spears and arrows, and will not withdraw until the day is won. So the first thing that this verse is pointing to is that samsaric beings, right, from their kind of mistaken conceptions of a friends and enemy, the way that they identify the enemy is in fact mistaken. That's the first point. So there are many people who, from a relatively minor misunderstanding or calamity, will label that this person is my enemy, and for long periods of their life they will engage in activities to undermine that person based upon this misconception. So, but the thing is, actually, identifying him or her, saying that they're the enemy and I'm going to engage in these activities to undermine them, this is a complete misunderstanding because actually they have already created the cause. Konso dunge yusak sariensa roa. Right. Because they are samsaric beings, they are continuously experiencing the 3 kinds of suffering anyway. So why do we need to engage in activities to undermine them? You don't need to give them an extra little tidbit of suffering on top of all the suffering they already have. As samsaric beings, they're already suffering a lot. And similarly, the fact that they are in a samsaric body means that this form will eventually end in death. So you certainly don't want to try to take things to shorten their life or kill them, right? That doesn't make sense. So bigger perspective, right? They're not our enemy at all. As a fellow sentient being, they are actually close to us. But even if they were our enemy, our way of kind of conceptualizing this is something that is totally mistaken. Right. Right. So the vigorously desiring to conquer those whose afflictions will naturally bring them suffering at death. Right.
거의 뭐 여러 와서 가서 봤지.
Yeah.
강가 로로 아니 요치와 니바 메바레스.
야보코마송. Sorry.
메메메 녀모세레 세티 세 녀모께 자마레스. 그래서 녀모 잘라바데 요치와 니바 메바.
카리니바 메바.
나로스 코아바 뭐 강가. 니바 메바 트네 할레베트네 강에는 대요 바치 라와스.
Ale. Loso. Yeah, koma송. Sorry.
아제.
거기 빈두.
로제 쳐와 녀바. 누가 뭐뭐 여바. 요치 니바 메바 치라와스.
Yes.
어디서 녀모다스 녀모바세아데.
Yomopasti kawatus.
치 돈보테다.
Engaged in a violent battle. Sorry, so I think this is a translation problem in the verse. So if you just give me a moment to work this out, what Geshe is saying and what the English says is not the same thing. So just give me a moment to check this carefully. Rangjin chiwe dunge gyurwe nyomondas.
녀모다사 녀모치두아스.
Ale, right.
녀모를 거야 말레스.
Right.
나로서 거의 머리야로 센제야로.
Yep.
녀치와 니바 메바자고치다 강에는 대요 바치레스.
Right, so vigorously desiring to conquer those whose afflictions will naturally bring them suffering at death. So this is a mistranslation, I think. It should be the afflicted ones. And Geshe is saying that the afflicted ones, nyomong dak, right? It's nyomong dak. So the afflicted ones is not referring to afflictions themselves in the sense of kleshas, right? Or afflictive emotions. It is referring to samsaric beings. So that's nyomong dak. So sorry about that, but I think that's a translation problem.
밑에 갈라카와서서 마서 그치.
Yeah. 인지 Yep.
난다보이는 녀모사 메다고 할때는 녀모마 말어와.
nyomong dak.
녀모 다세 까마레. 다 녀모 다스를 못지러와. 생체 요조.
Yeah.
녀모바레스 녀모바레스한테 녀추와레스.
Right.
얘도 녀모를 로만도 알아.
Yeah. So saying an afflicted one, saying that a person is an affliction, in this sense, it doesn't mean that they are an affliction in terms of this mistaken mind. What is this pointing to? It is pointing to, driven by karma and affliction, they are continually circling within samsara or cyclic existence. So they are an afflicted being. So I don't know if it's just me, maybe people can tell me later, but I don't think the translation really reflects that, but that's the meaning. So what this means is that the afflicted or the afflicted ones, they are humble in the sense of being powerless in this samsara, which is perpetuated by karma and affliction. Right. And so this idea of being humble in this sense, nyomchung is the word, right? This is in fact about being powerless. So here we're talking about how the samsaric being, the afflicted one, is powerless. But later, as we move through the text, we'll see that actually the afflictions themselves are spoken about as humble, which is interesting. So this will unfold later. So in this case, nyomchung or humble means not powerful, right? It's not humble in this in the way that we might usually think about it. And this is true, right? Samsaric beings are humble or not powerful in the sense that if we just remain without doing anything in this samsaric existence, we'll continue to circle over and over again, won't we? And the next part when we come to about the afflictions being humble, right, or lacking power, this is a kind of a nice thing which we'll come to later in the text. Yeah. Yep. And so also what this is showing us in the next example, right, how the people in battle are even willing to be pierced by arrows, we are not like that. Because when we experience a little bit of harm from somebody, we can't bear not giving an answer. We can't bear not replying to that slight. Right. So, but like for even lesser reasons than defeating the afflictions, people in the army and so forth, they are willing to endure great slight.
다 던지 이나스 다 니네조 그사 가르스니 고마테 선지 소제바.
And so then, if this is the case, then what should we do? Verse 38 answers that question.
또아도 둥아 근제 제체바 롱지장에 요체 도알라테 둥아 자토 저체 공기중 이체 질류 먼저 미치기.
Then what need to mention that I should not be faint-hearted and slothful, even if I am caused many hundreds of sufferings, when now I strive to definitely overcome my natural enemies, the afflictions, which are the constant source of my misery.
요다 제테니 또단 레완도 와스 다리테 마음줄로 고얀도 소소라이데 덴버레.
Yeah, cheers.
파치네츠 춘주질라테 다 단다 뭐 잔 라마라 제기요라 와스.
Yeah.
던지 강게냐 토고요나. 다 니네 제바 고게 제바 냐그사테 우마드레스.
So if for the relatively insignificant in the big picture spoils of war, these people in the army are willing to endure, like even being poked by spears and arrows and so forth, right? Then why should I?
다 많이 받지를 다주네 던디레카 제 토고요나 주자 토고요나 다 당이네 tel라 텔이 주단 디바 그래.
So they are willing to bear that to defeat an enemy who is not even a real enemy when they're in the army. So why am I not willing to endure a little bit of discomfort to defeat the ultimate enemy of the afflictions?
로지장에 디 가디이나요 디비티 다타이티 마고비티 가디이나요 누가 저 뭐지 바트게데 실로문도 다 노로 다 녀모 받으래 두아스.
The enemy which gives us continuous suffering, which has been our enemy in the 3 times of the past, the present, and will be in the future. This continuous enemy, the important one, is the afflictions.
누가 자타세긴도 와스 다라세 무치르 와스 저 뭐지바 다 단다 셔와 투마메바네 다 바드 강게지 데게.
So hundreds of sufferings, Geshe is explaining, is a euphemism here. In fact, it is countless sufferings from countless rebirths in samsara up until now that the afflictions have caused us trouble. So if you want to speak about the real enemy, or the rangjin here, it's natural enemy, it is none other than the affliction. So natural doesn't mean naturally existent in the sense of inherent existence. So Geshe just wants to tie the shoelaces here so that, that's not what it means, but it means natural in terms of position. Right? So they are naturally our enemy, right? So they're natural in that sense, but they are not naturally existent in the sense of inherent existence. They are true, right, in terms of how they are functioning, but they are not truly established. Yeah. So something being true and something being truly existent or truly established, there's a difference there. Nilux drupame hamoko. So because we've identified what the real enemy is, and because we understand that we need to defeat this enemy, then it is very important that we overcome laziness. So that's what's referenced here by faint-hearted and slothful. So why mustn't we be lazy? Because we are seeking that true and lasting happiness. Because we need the happiness or the bliss of liberation. So now we go to the verse 39, I believe. So if even scars inflicted by meaningless enemies are worn upon the body like ornaments, then why is suffering a cause of harm to me, who impeccably strives to fulfill the great purpose? Yeah. Masul senat nguma ma yesa di takyo badiro.
Yeah. Hakosara.
Hakusan.
Ta ngaroso madu jandi ja mama yinare ta mama mai nang hanzo no pes jandi janela social lil kangenda wote yona.
Yeah.
Makashe te chenge ngoso sertel.
So yeah, Hakusan. So say that you get into a fight with somebody. And or you know that you're in a battle and that somehow you get cut or something, and there is a scar that is left over from that. Some people are very proud of their scars from those battle wounds, right? They see it as an ornament, right?
Have you
ever met a type of person that is like that, you know, like each scar gives them the battle story that they can tell you, and they're quite proud to talk about that. Ale. So Geshe said that in Tibet, some people you would get into, I guess, some kind of a battle or fight, and it would leave like deep cuts on your head, and you would have these long scars on your head. And these people were always like sort of very proud of their head scars and said, you can never guess how this one happened. Yeah. So it's kind of a pride which is related to being seen as brave by others. Yeah. So actually something that arose from a difficult situation, these people are able to see those scars as an ornament. So if somebody is kind of willing to endure that physical discomfort and even see those scars as ornaments, how, when we are developing the positive mental qualities of love, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom that leads to liberation and so forth, how are we not able to be patient with some obstacles, patient with some discomfort? So we shouldn't just encountering some obstacles, some inconveniences in our practice immediately become discouraged. Right. It is a difficulty to achieve a great means, right? We shouldn't necessarily see it as an unbearable suffering.
So
look at Milarepa, right? Think about all of the things that he endured, right? Things that we would see as suffering, but he did not see them that way. And because of this, he was able to come to the very greatest result.
Lama
Tsongkhapa also going into seclusion in mountain retreat in very difficult conditions, right? But not seeing this as suffering, not seeing this as something difficult because it was connected to a great aim. $40. If fishermen, hunters, and farmers, thinking merely of their own livelihood, endure the sufferings of heat and cold, why am I not patient for the sake of the world's joy? So we think about, for example, the farmer, right? And he or she is out there working in the fields, enduring bad weather, enduring various kinds of heat and cold, but thinking it is worth it for the result of the harvest. They don't kind of remain focused on that suffering. But those farmers and so forth, they are just thinking of the harvest of this life. They're just thinking of a good result in this life and willing to endure all those inconveniences just for that sake.
다 간주 칼레자세나 뭐도 단 로또 신나도 칼레 말에 다 이나요 또비 칼레라고 어쩌기나 칼레자에 돼 멋지 멋자터 개자마로 용주 대시 된다래니 와스.
But, us, maybe especially as beginners, we see the obstacles or difficulties in our practice as something significant. But actually, we shouldn't see them as that consequential, because not only are we going for a good result, unlike the farmer where it's a result of one lifetime or for a few people, this is a result that will benefit all sentient beings. So if we understand this line of reasoning, what happens is we will be able to cultivate, to practice without a sense of great difficulty, right? That's the aim here. So because of countless rebirths habituation to the attitude of self-cherishing or self-centeredness, then as a beginner on the path, right? Love, compassion, and bodhicitta, as we cultivate those, we have a feeling of obstacle or resistance. But once we achieve stability in those practices of love, compassion, and bodhicitta, what happens is that we go from happiness to happiness very smoothly. And think about those people even just playing football, right? All of the physical exertion and difficulty that they're willing to endure, and that's just for the sake of maybe winning one match, just winning one match. Yeah, so there are many other examples that we can think of that are similar, that relate to this as well. Yes. Verse 41, when I promised to liberate all those beings dwelling in the 10 directions as far as the ends of space from their afflictions, I myself was not yet freed from mine. So this is pointing to a conundrum, which is, if we kind of don't bolster ourselves but just remain as we are, don't make meaningful progress, then we're leaving many sentient beings continuing to experience difficulties. And we made promises to help them, right? We made promises or commitments not to do that. So all of the commitments and promises we made to benefit others, if we don't take any steps to reduce the afflictions within ourselves that hinder us from achieving those, then those promises become something like falsehoods. Yeah, so that's one way of seeing this verse. Verse 42, thus unaware of even my own capacity, was it not somewhat crazy to have spoken like that? But as this is so, I must never withdraw from vanquishing my disturbing conceptions or my afflictions. Yeah, so this is another heavy one, right?
This one.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Right. Right. So this is kind of pointing to, if you've made a promise, this great promise of I am going to free all sentient beings from suffering, but you're not even doing anything about reducing the afflictions within yourself that block you from that, then you're sort of crazy to have made the promise because you're not even willing to do the minimum to actualize it. So it's so that it reminds Geshe of the famous saying of Lord Milarepa when he said, the beings of the world see me as crazy, but I see the beings of the world as crazy. All right. So then never withdrawing means that in terms of the afflictions such as anger and so forth, we must continuously work to diminish or purify them. So we have made these commitments and promises to accomplish the welfare of others. But how, and there's a famous saying, how can we presume to subdue the minds of others when we have not subdued our own minds first? So we have to work on reducing the afflictions. And so the other thing too we can understand is to have a holistic view of our practice. So for example, let's say that we become very, very determined to accomplish shine, to accomplish calm abiding. And we just focus on that and leave out all of the other practices. This is something that is not logical as well. Yep. So in the Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stages of the path and the other stages of the path literature, it makes it very clear that we need a holistic engagement with hearing, contemplation, and meditation in order to be successful in training in subduing our own mind. We cannot pick one aspect of the entire path and just exclusively focus on that and expect to have a meaningful subduing. Nganso nesu chatsong wa nyamdu ha kogure mato chikla tene uzu jamna pendok mandu. Yeah. So practice chik halepe uzu tsabosone. So the path has to be cultivated holistically. We don't cherry pick one thing that gives us peace, that makes us feel good, and put all the energy into that. That is not the way to achieve meaningful progress.
Right. Right. All
right. So Geshe is remembering the story of a monk from Sera who was very determined to achieve a calm abiding, single-pointed concentration in his meditation. And so for 20 years, he, didn't do many other things except trying to develop this calm abiding. So he thought that he had achieved calm abiding, and then there was a great teacher at Indian Monastery, widely regarded as a bodhisattva, who he went to consult. And the teacher at Indian told him, you haven't achieved calm abiding at all. All you've done is gone from a coarse mental laxity to a subtle mental laxity, right? So that was the result of his 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So there's also the story of before the time of the Buddha, there was this great Tirtika yogi, right? This great follower of one of the other Indic spiritual traditions who really focused on developing calm abiding, single-pointed samadhi. And then at the end of this, as he was sitting in his cave, some mice began to nibble on his very long hair, which had grown long during his meditation, and then this disturbed him and he got upset. So this is another famous story.
다 야 된리가 다 대도시네 동이네 토요를 띵한저 토쇼테 토요를 이나 이렇게 타바토송을 건노디요.
So with this particular yogi, the Tirtika yogi, Geshe is saying that it's very likely that he did achieve calm abiding, single-pointed concentration. But his mistake was thinking that this samadhi was moksha, thinking that it was liberation, rather than just that single-pointed concentration. Yeah, so that's another story to illustrate this point. Ale, listen.
지금 차오지라. 단내서 여보 시바이나요. 서로서서 다 개파할래 비다보 이나요. 다 녀래 니네 녀모로야지 내가 맞잖아. 요 따다래게 요 말이세요.
But what's the other side of this? Say that you develop a very holistic understanding of Buddhism, that you become a very skilled scholar, but that knowledge is never used to bring pressure to bear on the afflictions, that the knowledge is never used to do that. Yeah.
This one, 야때 저거 사고질라 봐에는 간조 셀 작업 뺐다 잘라베니 강가짜 첨보 비다보 녀래 첨보 뺐다
자거 판디다
강가짜 첨보 이미 놓아지 용거도 왔어.
So if we say, for example, one of the great Indian pundits, immediately will have this feeling of kind of reverence in our mind of this very great and holy scholar.
아니 어때 따다래서 말아봐. 사녀래 따다 맞잖아. 아니 조지 니마치르타 코로 라마치도 녀달라. 아니 고마잔에 배겨 알아스. 고마잔에 배배가라 라마티 노지치시라 수르지요 말 치수르지잖아.
로소 숭신한게요 말.
로스시라 누르지요 말이지 알아스.
로소
조지 라마치 알아스. 라마 슬림바 말이잖다지.
로소
아니 니마치르 som바치 돈에 반도비가라. 토자고제 치코니라. 에 조지 야고 뼈트다 코로스 모시 바지. 뼈트다 대용
So a story that came to mind was a story about Lord Atisha. And so Lord Atisha, he is widely regarded as a learned pandit. And there was another, Mijanda di Pandita re Lamares, Pandita Mares.
So,
the quote, Sampa Tugendi. And so Atisha encountered one of his gurus, and this particular guru was known for being very respected, widely realized, but didn't necessarily give many oral teachings. Anyways, so as Atisha encountered him, he said, "Did you hear that one of the pundits from our monastery has been reborn in the hell realm?" So he didn't teach much, but this was a very pithy teaching that Atisha received from his guru, which is that study itself is not enough. Learned itself is not enough. So this particular guru of Atisha, he didn't really give official public teachings, but sometimes just in an instant, you would get a very profound pith instruction, and this was one of those. But think about that, if even a pandit can be reborn in the hell realm, for example, that's, something to contemplate. Loso. So this is just to drive the point home that our study and practice, we want it to be correct, right? Unmistaken. We want it to be complete, and we also want it to be holistic. This is very important. And so also, just a respectable practice is not measured by the amount of suffering that one undergoes in it, right? This is like the view of the Tirtikas, who thought that if I pierce my flesh, if I cut my body and so forth, that this somehow means I'm a profound practitioner. That's mistaken.
다 때노아 첨보지를 조세래 세토마서 그러마도 달려 때 말에 손지게 말해서.
That's a really big mistake because it misses the entire point. The main thing is the mind. That is what we wish to subdue, right? Austerities of the body don't necessarily ensure that. So very important.
다 디바지.
Loso again.
다 논제송아. 다 지치셔서 바로.
Geshe Sonam loso.
ndala dagi shejaji kendo zuni yetede nomba tendi nyemu ba nyemu njoje mato so
43. And to do this will be my sole obsession. Holding a strong grudge, I shall meet them in battle. But afflictions such as these afflictions are not to be abandoned.
던지송아 단대지 오자서 그러면 대지 노이냐가 지워요 아래.
So verse 43, this has to be explained and we have to think about it very carefully, because if we just read it on the surface level, there's a real danger of falling into a mistaken understanding.
단계 치는 녀모사 아치 치치래서 와서 녀모만 임바지라.
Right.
녀모버서 녀모버서 치대지 노약 년간도 왔어.
So the reason is we can say that it looks like they're saying that there are afflictions that are not to be abandoned, and then it's like saying that there are afflictions that are not really afflictions. So this needs to be explained.
단디쇼로 같은 가로서 노지 머시비 제제도 내가 침보 소노도 해요. 그래서 머시비 제제.
Mishiba jujisana?
맞아 말해 말고.
Sange masunge.
녀반주의 고시 소리.
Right.
녀반주의 고시게 노는 내가 침보지요.
So we can relate this verse to the 4 doors to the accumulation of faults. The 4 doors to the accumulation of faults.
나로서 녀반주의 고시게 노는 고시와트 다 녀가 채워지자. 고시와트 가르래서나. 녀모 공시체와 이나요. 소소 따지서 가라 소소소. 녀모 가르시체가 뭐야 용거요나. 디 녀벌레 가시 가래서.
And so related to that, to those 4, is this principle that we need to identify whichever affliction is the strongest within us and apply the antidote to that first.
됐어?
Yep.
다 녀바세로 노인녀가 되느냐. 녀바세리 녀모 공모아 공또 체가 용한테 녀바라 왔어.
Yeah.
녀바 녀바 고라 왔어.
Yep. So why does this relate to the 4 doors of the accumulation of faults? Because whichever affliction is the strongest, whichever affliction is the more prominent, that is the one that is going to lead us more immediately to committing misdeeds.
다단데 된다고 생각이 와레스. 빼나가로서 뭐 소설 강의적이 뭐지요나. 콩알 내바시케디 생가로서 가디나 세네 켄즈.
Senate. Right. Yeah.
진입하대.
Yeah. Kansas Senate. Samlo tang parja mi tuba dabaji.
마가와치는 가디나 세냐데 그러와스.
So this word obsession, Geshe said, let's relate it to an everyday example. Somebody who causes a little bit of harm to us. We just can't stop thinking about them. And we can't stop thinking about how we want to do something back. That's like an obsession, right?
그래서 다 때오 아주 캔즈서사든 다 노아치 당연히 저는 노아라 와서 다이나 될라야만 되와.
But where we place our obsession and that energy is actually mistaken. That's not what we should be obsessed with.
당연히 캔즈서가서 설에서나 녀마녀마를 녀모슈 체가 모아 또 체가 가르용 거다될 캔즈서나 오버에서 가서.
What should we be obsessed with? Identifying the strongest affliction that gives us the most trouble and is present from day to day, and vigorously work to oppose this. If we do that, we're an obsessed person, but we're a heroic obsessed person.
다 대시 소소 따지 릴라고만 되와스. 대 가디 용거디 올라 달레비칼 토코 날 강에 제키티. 코 날 내바시키티. 코가 기보 메바조 키티 소노토네.
That's not so easy, is it? Because oftentimes the affliction arises and we're not even necessarily aware, or it overtakes us. But to say, okay, this is the affliction, this is the prominent one. This is the one that has caused me all of the problems. This is the root of all suffering, and I'm going to oppose this. This type of obsession is not so easy to manifest.
다 대호트 갔다와 이나 캔즈 속에 와라와스. 캔즈 속에 와 이제 캔즈셀이 노지 녀모기 좀 넘바지라와스.
Right. Yeah.
녀모도 나원아지 차바래 되는데 녀모 마르다스.
So that kind of obsession is something that is helpful to us. Now, this is a paradox because obsession sort of sounds like an afflicted mind. It sort of sounds like an afflicted mind. But when this is applied as a determination to vigorously define and oppose the most pernicious affliction, it is actually something virtuous. It is not something afflicted. Right. So obsession here is not, in the correct context, is not something that is going to enhance our afflicted mind or disturb it. In fact, it is something that is going to act as an antidote to the affliction. So within the Uttara Tantra Shastra, it illustrates this very clearly, where it references the Buddha's teaching that there is no sentient being which is an enemy. There is only the enemy, which is the klesh, the afflictions.
Right.
So what do we want to do as we cultivate this path to make sure that it is done in an unmistaken way? We want to make sure that this obsessive energy, that our obsession is directed to where it should be, towards defeating the afflictions. We don't want to be obsessed about a person. We don't want to foment that sort of obsession, because this is what will lead us down the wrong path. So we have to be careful about the word obsession here, right? This can be easily understood, because when we hear obsession, immediately this feels like an afflicted energy mind, but in the correct context it is not.
Oh,
sorry, nga di trua chikyo roa. Nansu nyumon kashe roa pangoya mendus ki dunda dabo chikyo res. Dinso kare res.
Kandis.
Jibshuje sumgi nangla roa. Nyumon zeche toksos.
Nyamun yoje matoso.
Yeah.
Me. Kenza tela.
Yeah.
Nomba nyamu ikyo yorwas.
Ale.
Tanda kenza te gaya tere te nyamu marada.
Right, okay. So I just wanted to point to something just this so that it ties it up neatly. So we're talking about disturbing conceptions or afflictions that are not to be abandoned for the time being. So that is what Geshe was illustrating in this example, right? The obsession, which is mentioned earlier in this verse, is such a thing, because it is actually acting as a positive thing to defeat the afflictions. Right. So an obsession which targets and diminishes the afflictions is something that is positive for us and should not be abandoned. An obsession with any other type of thing is an object of abandonment.
No, Donna said the search to dog and go, no back in the name of Dalandava Majago.
Verse 44, it would be better for me to be burned, to have my head cut off, and to be killed, rather than ever bowing down to those ever-present afflictions. Right. Right. So a hero or a heroine, Geshe is saying, Pao and Pamo, right? It's totally inclusive, is somebody who is just willing to endure this, any type of difficulty, to avoid bowing down, to avoid giving in to the afflictions.
타마 다와 예네 슈는 이제다다 니시 요스네 니파티네 데도 셔도게 냐모다스 데도 라마이.
Verse 44, common enemies, when expelled from one country, simply return. 45, sorry, yes, verse 45. Sorry. Common enemies, when expelled from one country, simply retire and settle down in another. Though when their strength is recovered, they return. But by the way of this enemy, my disturbing conceptions is not similar in this respect. Yeah. Right. So when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he gave a powerful statement. Kunjung? Right. Right. True origins should be abandoned. There is no origin to be abandoned. So that's a little mysterious. It's related to this point here. When we speak about true origins, origins is mainly speaking about karma and affliction, and out of those two, affliction is the main one. Yes. Right. So what does it mean when the Buddha says that true origins should be abandoned? There is no true origin to be abandoned. It means that once you abandon one of the afflictions, which is the true origin, you do not have to abandon it again. That task is complete.
Yeah. So that's the same as what this verse here is illustrating, right? Like if we think of a worldly enemy, they might have the loss in the battle, but then they're going to go back to their country and they're just going to lie in wait to prepare to attack us again. But this is not the case with the afflictions, right? Once the afflictions are defeated, really defeated, that affliction can never again return. Even if, so say that you defeated a certain affliction, even if you spend the rest of your life like sleeping around in bed and relaxing all day for 24 hours, that affliction is never going to come back, even if you do that. Yeah. That's pretty good. I wouldn't mind sleeping for 24 hours. Yep. Right. But think about that worldly enemy, right? Like the one that isn't really the enemy, but that the sentient being that we label as the enemy, even though we're really not. Even if we defeat them, or even if we defeat them completely, right? They're going to have like maybe a cousin, a sibling, or so forth, who's going to kind of regroup that power and come and seek revenge. So they're not really defeated. So we have there's somebody in the world who thinks like that, right? Like first they say, oh yes, we've defeated the enemy, but then they realize that, oh, actually that person hasn't been defeated at all. And then there's another person that comes to take their place. And it's like, okay, once we defeat this one, then it's going to be the end of the story. But we see that actually there's always another battle to be fought, isn't it? Right, so the common enemies, right, this is the mistaken enemy, the thing that isn't really the enemy, the sentient being, and this should be distinguished from the true enemy, which is, of course, the afflictions. So we often give the analogy of not only do we have to,
we say that the affliction is like the thief that is in our house. Not only do we have to kick the thief out of our house, but we have to also close the door behind them. But once that door is closed behind them and locked, that affliction is never again going to return. So if we can really defeat that true enemy, which is the affliction, then we are a true scholar and a true hero or heroine. Chicos, so Geshe said that finishes our discussion of Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra for today. So we are finishing verse 45 in chapter 4. And Geshe said we'll just do one verse of recognizing my mother. Profound Song of the View. Loso.
Data Chichi Parwa. Data Ama Yeretiana Lono Lili the Lono Lili the Yeke Mande Nego Mari Piche Moncho Ama Gemote Chito Duco.
He needs his glasses. Okay. Yeah, so we are verse number 11. But such vivid duality is not found on my mother's unveiled face, I believe. From protracted discussions missing the point, my old mother is liable to flee.
This one, Tunyu to be Shira, the Ama Yiritana Sertumani Sanandra Tunyu to be Shira, you are was.
Yeah. So wisdom realizing emptiness, we could say, or just emptiness itself, right? This is like the face of the mother. This is something This is something that is not truly existent, right? It lacks true existence.
This one, no Lily said no. So
there is an appearance, they call it the Nangwalu
Lily, Lono Lily.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Deltana, Lono Lilinda, what you are was,
right.
Right.
So when we see the mother's unveiled face, this wisdom realizing emptiness, we will not have this appearance like when we see this object, for example, which is really that there is something that is findable, something that is pinpointable. Yeah.
Demba chaba roji chaba gajare chichire nini rese noa lili te pageja
Noa lili pageja
manoa inere tando noa inere medo noa inere demba chebe noa ti chutu chine mache roji chaba gajare gajare dilane de deva ina tenen denon rogi ya mare.
So if we have these protracted discussions missing the point, Geshe is describing what that is. Di yanger sundan kale kale ngaya po komason ko da pikale nga.
So
we may pretend, right, that we are negating the object of negation, true existence or inherent existence. We may say that we are doing that. But we may say we're doing that, yet that appearance of true existence that arises together with particular objects like the flower or the table and so forth, we never take a moment to refute that. So as long as we do that, as long as we do not address the object of negation, that appearance as it arises with the object, that actually takes us further and further away from our mother, from the wisdom realizing emptiness. So that's what means that she is liable to flee. Not that she's going to run away, but that we just draw further from her, not doing this correctly. So it is true that the object of negation is true or inherent existence, but the object of negation must be refuted as it appears to our mind. So as that appearance of true existence arises together with any object, that is the moment to apply and overcome that object of negation.
델라타니 nga noa kandis shagandu sono to kachi mo isares.
So when you're at home, you can try a really simple exercise. You can just try saying I, or you can try saying me. So say I and me at home, and then just watch. How does the conception of that arise in my mind?
Tandri nga te aroso noa la koro cha yenda kola yo pimbodo teji judo meba koro yo be noa chi tende yo ares.
We'll see that when we do that, if we're honest with what we're observing, there's a sense of me, a sense of I that arises and seems independent, not depending on the skandhas or aggregates, for example.
Right.
And that is that appearance that we want to look at, right? And that's definitely something that is arising. And Geshe says we say an appearance, but we could also say it's like a feeling. Right? It's like a feeling. And that feeling is this sense of like, there's a me, there's an I here that is just there, that doesn't rely on the skandhas or not, that doesn't depend on the skandhas or not. And so that's what we mean when we speak about this vivid duality, right? It's that object together with that sense of its true existence.
This one, that thing in it, and reaching to the Madukale, in a copimbo, to Mombo, Chitsu, then it tell a ten tabajimato, not Tangisomano, Korokoro dedicated.
When we examine this, though, we'll see that this appearance of how it exists, and the way that we're thinking about it, is not how it exists at all. There is merely an I or a self which arises connected with the aggregates that can be merely designated. That is what is there.
That gazette Tatanganzo, Tadan's Marie Pate, Lassi Tabanuji, Manuelation Lassi Tagaras, then no you are see that Chimbozo Carestabo.
Yeah, so Geshe said that we have to first bring forth this ignorance grasping at the self, this misconception, in a real way so that we can identify and negate it. So it's a little bit like deity yoga, right? You're trying to arise the deity and identify with that. In this case, we're trying to arise the self-grasping ignorance so that we can counter it.
This was Sunny or Tassi, and a Taniki on the Tanisian stage taught opportunity, and Tanisian on the thing in it to do the
So once that feeling comes, right? Once that feeling comes that there is true existence, right? That appearance of true existence. Once that's there in a real way, then we have to check it. Say that, is this conception of things the way that things really are?
And
we have to watch this carefully, and we have to be aware of that misconception whenever it creeps up, because we know, right, that if our house has things inside it which people want to steal, we may locate a thief and kick them out of our house, but they may try to come back if they know there's something of value inside. So first, what we want to do is arise that feeling, this appearance of true existence. We want to recognize it, think about if it is based on reasoning or not, and then we engage with the antidotes to counter it. This is how we proceed.
And
we have to be clear on this point, especially those of us who can consider ourselves practitioners of deity yoga, because deity yoga that is practiced without this understanding can actually enhance our self-grasping rather than reduce it. So as much as possible, we want to bring our mind in the direction of thinking of the teachings on selflessness. So how do we know that our contemplation and meditation on selflessness is going well? We can know this by when outside of the meditation session, our experience and ability to maintain minds like love, compassion, and so forth is improved. that's a good sign that our understanding of selflessness is sound.
다 세계 예대가 슈를 보게 그들 가와처럼도야 뽑아처럼도야 단지 용거요나 다 동반이 거자야 되고 다던 로고 여기 따지래.
When we take more joy in cultivating the positive mental qualities, when we are more courageous in our determination to develop them, that is also a sign that the teachings on selflessness have really penetrated in our meditation.
다도 어떻게지래는데 그래서 레마도 동반이 있네 곰비가라 주고 셰비가라 더 주도 제요 말이스.
So, but just to be clear, that's how we're cultivating outside the session. In that moment that we are trying to do single-pointed meditative equipoise on emptiness, it is only emptiness that is being held within the mind as the object of focus. Okay, so thank you very much. We will end our discussion here so we can lift up our minds in joy and dedicate the merits. And of course, as I always say, if you have things you need to attend to today, you can feel free to get on with your day. But if you'd like to stay for question and answer, you are most welcome. Changkya Semjo Rinpoche Maje Banam Chejo Richi Cheba Nyamba Meba Yang Kone Gonda Bewa Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Chejo Richi Cheba Nyamba Meba Yang Kone Gonda Bewa Sho Jambe Bao Jita Jamba No Kundu Zambo Deon Dejende Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Je Gewa Dida Tanje Radungo Dusun Shebe Gewa Tanje Je Ngowa Gangla Chodunga Bade Dagi Gewe Zawa Digo Zambo Cheje Radungo Wargi Ganji Rawe Koye Shigozo Pendan Dewa Malin Jungwene Chenre Siwan Tenzen Jazoye Shape Side Badu Tenjoji. So we'll pause there. So are there any questions? I think I did see something pop up in the chat, so if nobody wants to speak right away, maybe we could start there. Was it you, Dekili? Yeah, no, if you'd like to say it in person, that's even better. Go ahead.
Let me lower my hand. Okay, here we go. Question about the last point. Verse 45. I guess my main question, what's the difference between obscurations and afflictions? And it's related to the question about the abandonment of afflictions. How does this relate to the complete abandonment of obscurations in the path of meditation up to the ninth bhumi? And then the stains, the knowledge obscurations in the ninth bhumi. Does this suggest that this can't fully happen until just before full enlightenment?
And sorry, what verse was this again, Dekili?
45.
45, yes, thank you. Okay. Jibshuje ngagi nangla roa. Dene nganso di netsu tama di dapochik roa. Ko chena jawadi nganso di kaneslaugare par pang mitubiagi netsu chikyore parpang goyamandus kariensena nganso sa gupa bardu nganso dripa gi bakshak roa shedrib dinso mepaso tugio mares roa dene nyomong dang shedrib nigi nangne kepar kandes chikres
jikaze
ya jibishenga
It's questioning, once you defeat an abandonment, it's gone.
Yeah. Then it pangja chik pangne tene pet pangsare duas dabochi.
Can't the stains emerge?
Tsuryongi omares donda.
Yeah, tengi tangila sons. Puja karina nyamo nganzo pusate.
Yeah.
Hakosara.
Yeah.
Ko sabe do chipachi zonzo chasona.
Right.
Tenezu de kochiluya modus. Sajajanda chilandro sa
So
Geshe
said that, like, what he feels the point is here is that once the affliction has been abandoned completely, it is like that seed that is burned by the fire. It can never possibly bring forth a result. So it is not like that worldly enemy who withdraws back to their own country to regroup and could possibly cause us problems again. Yeah. So after that abandonment, it can never trouble us again. And this is juxtaposed to this worldly enemy, right? Who, even if we defeat him or her, maybe they, or if they're not there, their relatives can regroup and come back and cause us harm. So it is not like that after the abandonment has been reached. Yeah. So the afflictions are not like an enemy like that can come back again. So I think that what he's saying is that doesn't necessarily have to be the ninth bhumi. Yeah, he's not sure how the ninth bhumi fits in here.
My understanding is that we're abandoning obscurations until the ninth bhumi, and then the knowledge obscurations on the ninth.
Oh, you mean the afflictions? We're abandoning the afflictive obscurations rather than the knowledge obscurations till the 10th bhumi. Right. Nganso di jib nigi nanglola roa sa gupa bartu nyunjib matok shinjib mepaso tugiomares di dampare besa. Yeah, nyunjib sa gupa bartu roa. Dene sa gupa sarwe jela. Dene nganso shijib mepaso tugiomares. Sajeba. So it's the 8th bhumi, actually. Not the 9th. It's the 8th bhumi.
But my understanding is that you still got the stain, so it's not fully abandoned until that point.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yene nyundrib din so chikpo pangne, nanso bakchak shijib datung yotsang, bakchak datung yotsang, denen yumong tsur yong tubyagi jigpa chikyere. I see what you're saying now. So you're saying, Dekili, just let me make sure I understand your line of reasoning. Because the imprint left behind, or the stain left behind by the affliction is still present, isn't it that the affliction could somehow be revived from that and come back to trouble us? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because my understanding is that's abandoned right before enlightenment.
Yeah. Karin-san, the baksha. He understands your question. Right. So if the seed is still present, there could be a slight danger of the enemy returning. But if it is just the imprint left behind rather than the seed, there is not this danger. So this is a very confusing point, because in some texts you'll see that seed, sabun bakshak tankare, seed, imprint, and potentiality are of one meaning. So in some texts it says seed, imprint, and potentiality are of one meaning. Right. But when we are talking about the capacity of the embers being able to revive the affliction, distinguishing between a seed and an imprint, and I think Dekili, you were using the word stain here, which is sometimes used for imprint, but I'll just use imprint. So the distinguishment here is very important. So as long as the seed is there, right? Even if we don't water or fertilize it, there's always the fear that somehow that tree could come back, right? We could say apple or orange tree, or maybe a poison tree in this case, right? There's always just in the back of our mind, we think, oh, but that seed is still there, right? Yep. Kare.
사벨라 되니 에포시에 사서
Yeah.
고출랑도 사서 마
Yeah. Kale shingtongdi.
에포
Yeah. Dene?
다그 니반다고 줄어요 알아봤어
Yeah.
사벨라
Saben
되니 뭐 사벨 요 말이었어 사벨라 되니 사서
Ale. Right.
다 개인이라고 지요 알아봐
Right.
벨라 되니 용조 코치 용거에서 도박 그거 말아봤어
Okay. All right.
맞아 된다고
Okay.
하고서
야부공모송 건다.
야 빼는 내 니에드 내 매도 이나 그 사벨 요나 그 용거에서 가서 도박스나 뭐디
Right. So we can think that if we have a seed that can give rise to a flower, as long as that seed is present, the flower coming is a possibility. Trolla drogi mari kensen sabun datung du, ko trolla drona madrona sabun datung du. Ale, okay. Yeah. Di kila gishing di mixel double chi, right? Yeah.
살마 사사소나 고 바자라고 지요아레스
Yeah.
바자 사지
Ale.
니나 코치 용거에서 아껴자 요만 와스
Okay, so I see what's happening here. So, but let's assume that the seed has already brought forth its result. And the result that has happened has not produced any more seeds. So once that tree or that plant dies and withers away, it may leave a stump or some kind of imprint in the soil, but that is never going to be able to be revived into a tree.
야 듀기시 질배자는 이야기인데 단다 듀
Yeah.
듀기시지나
Yeah.
사베요는 듀기시 고 용거에서 가서 도바요 아레스
If there's still a seed that is present, right, that poison tree or that poison plant could always revive. But if it has arisen and just fallen away and no seeds remain, then it can never come back.
다 듀기시 야사치 버게 류사지요나 잘라지요나 듀기시 코다 두는 류야로 와서 코 매자소나
Yeah.
기 신다고 좀한다고 지요하러 와단다
Right.
델라테네 듀기시 용거에서 도바 그거 말했어
But as long as no seeds are left behind, if you have a stump of that poison tree in the field and that's all that's there, right? That's not going to be enough for the poison tree to come back. So although you have a visual impression that is still in the ground, you don't need to worry about that poison tree returning.
데레 다 된다 체데레 사베세나 고로근 리우시마 시에 토야가 니바치 사베세가
Sabente. Yeah.
바초세나 고로가 나마지 야비 니바치레스
Right. Okay. 아보고마송
그거
칼레칼레.
고면 됐어
고마송.
니에드스 매도
Yeah.
매도 사베세나 매도 시마시야 시에 토야가 니바치레스
So a seed is necessarily a potentiality that can give rise to the result again. So the seed of the flower plant can grow again into a flower plant. Baksha?
바초세나
Yep.
디거 매도 고로 이나레 사베가 야비 니바치레 마도
Right.
하고서와
Yep.
시마시 시에 토야 깨져 요 말레스
An imprint is an impression left behind by that plant, but it does not necessarily have the power to grow into another plant again.
저건도와
Uh-huh.
어다 데레 저건도다
Loso. Denidi kochiyo kanis drogere, disa jepa danden so cheshi jatan.
밀사 제바트 진짜 자가 말다 데자 송아스 사베도 바차니
Loso.
다 바차 메바서 알아 다 녀모도 코송아서 살아왔어
Yeah.
다 이나 니빠 뒤자도 하야 이자 데르다 시저
So once you defeat the first obscuration of the afflictions, the seeds are cleared away and they cannot return. The imprints are left behind, and those will only be defeated when we overcome the knowledge obscurations. But those imprints, although they're sort of a potentiality or they can block things, they cannot grow into a new affliction.
뒤가 사베 메바서 사수 뒤 메바서 사시 다
Yeah.
이나 디가
Dugi drima da
어 자마도 니빠다 워치라스
Right,
데세
right. So if you think of the example of a poison tree, Dekili, what you think is that we've defeated it when the afflictive obscurations are defeated. We've defeated it to the point that that tree can never grow back again, but there's an imprint of that tree that remains, so it may be that parts of the ground are still poisoned, right? There's a latency or the smell of poison or something, a stain of poison, that's the word used, that's a good word, a stain of poison left behind.
All right.
Did that
Thank
answer your question?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, no, and thank you for that question. It's a good one. Yeah.
부자 보도 되라 부자 보도 되라 대하지 하고는 야보야 puja chembo-sani mango-tsuni pungu yores.
Yeah.
Nyembo chungu-sani yandro leka-chindu yores.
Loso. And so, in terms of objects of abandonment, because this was part of Dekili's question, Geshe just wanted to comment a little bit upon that. If we have a coarse object of abandonment, or maybe I should say a powerful object of abandonment, sometimes a subtle antidote rather than a ham-fisted one is more effective.
Tesi wo sha mato no pena kiji tamal pe yores.
Yeah, Hagusan.
Dulu kita pege thala to kala sani ji luso na. Tech tama chembo was.
Yeah, Hagusan.
Del nyembo chunju mato gamares leka che chunju ji gzong zo to.
Right. So let's illustrate this point by the type of detergent that you use. If you have like a big piece of food that drops on your clothes and it leaves just a surface stain, your normal detergent is going to be enough to get rid of that surface stain.
This one?
Yeah.
Kata numda wodo, ta tani shasa da koro ji was.
Yeah.
Dejilo kan nyembo chembo pe mato ndo was.
If it is a drop of oil from that food that has fallen into your collar, even though it doesn't leave as big as an impression as that big piece of food, you're not going to be able to get rid of that oil from the fabric just with your regular detergent. You're going to have to use something else and really scrub.
Puja chere ni ma me ba so yare. Nyembo chungo ni yaro yare.
So this is kind of the paradox of like the bigger object of abandonment sometimes requires the less powerful antidote, and the more subtle object of abandonment requires the specialized powerful antidote.
Oh yeah, so.
Yeah, so that's Geshe-la's comments on that. Dave, you've been waiting there patiently, so go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a question that came through our book club chat that we have. The question is about, so Geshe this morning again mentioned that the seeds of negative karma are destroyed by emptiness. Right. So but then Greg mentioned that there are karmic remainders that even the Buddha experienced, such as I recall that he would encounter thorns quite often.
We talked about this, yes. Wherever the Buddha walked, he would be stepping on a thorn, and one of his attendants tried to clear these away, and they would grow back. Yes.
So the Buddha would have extinguished all of his negative karma, and yet he's encountering thorns. So what's the story there?
I think last time we told Greg that he was manifesting the aspect, didn't we? But let me ask it again if we get a different answer. Nguma nganso bakchak denso mepasona roa dene konso tsur kyune yong tugi mendus. Yine tompa chom dende yana nguma tompa chom dende kawa pebna dene kandeslaugere kap chung chung gi shingtong da bochik yongere duas. Yine ko bakchak sabun dang bakchak dang chatsangwa pangne sangye pares roa dene dinso chung chung kande kare. He said he gave an easy answer to this last time. I was remembering that too. Yeah.
I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think it's okay to do it again. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, in ngune nyongo mares nimi hakoe giche nyongires. Right. Yeah. So and I think so Geshe was saying he did give the answer, but maybe it wasn't a satisfying answer. But the answer he gave is that the Buddha, yes, from that point of view, yes, that is correct. He had abandoned all need to experience those things. However, the disciples need to understand that karma is extremely subtle and that we need to abide by the law of karma and work on purifying the imprints left behind by karma. In order for them to understand this, yeah, the Buddha manifested this aspect of having to walk on those prickly bushes or whatever. So Geshe said that he doesn't actually have a super brilliant erudite answer to this, but this is his best can do answer for this question because it is a tricky question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Right. And so Geshe just wanted to relate this also to a teaching of Lord Atisha in Tibet. So when Atisha first came to Tibet, there was this sort of idea that small transgressions were not of such significance. But Atisha kind of corrected this and said we need to pay attention to those small transgressions as well. Therefore, think this is an accumulation of karma. This is an accumulation of karma. Lesak. Yeah. Oh, so he said cause and effect are profound. Cause and effect are profound. So he asked people to remember that. Yeah. So when Atisha, for example, was traveling from one house to another, right, during his teaching tour, the minute a non-virtuous thought arose in his mind, he would dismount from his horse, kneel on the ground, and confess it immediately. And some of his Tibetan friends thought this is over the top. They were like, Lord Atisha, like, we're going to get to the next monastery in, like, a few minutes. So just, like, relax and you can do your thing there. So they would say this to him. Yes. And so, did Atisha need to do this? Maybe not. But it was his way of admonishing the disciples, right? To be careful about karma. So karma is profound, which means both wholesome and unwholesome karma are profound, which means that even a slight unwholesome karma can remain as a potentiality in the mind, which could cause us some sort of a difficulty or obstacle in the future. Right. Yeah. So the profundity and the importance of karma is also evident from the outlines in the Lamrim Chemo, in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Tsongkhapa, where Tsongkhapa has in the outline the root of all happiness and goodness, cause and effect. So the fact that he glosses cause and effect with the root or the source of all happiness and goodness is very telling. Yeah, so that's all that Geshe wanted to say there. I think I saw it. Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Right. So Greg is putting in the chat the context of that question that we were discussing. So I'll read it out here.
Yeah.
The context of our book club discussion was whether practicing the four opponent powers was sufficient to destroying negative karma, right, or simply keep it from ripening or lessening its effects. Which Greg thought that the Yogacarya view was that the four opponent powers would simply lessen its effects or keep it from ripening.
Right. Okay, yes, no, we can ask this. That's a good nuance. Tene nganso nyampo topji koronso deb kolagi drolin chikere roa don traje. Tene michik di nyampo topji roa konso kandeslagre migewe le dang bakchak tsawanine mepaso tugires yamena ko kandeslagre tets nyung rutang tupa kandisagure drebu shukchampo mayongya dapo chip kres. Ko minya tets kogires ine mebaso to gilmaris.
말에 바쳐도 매워서 더 말했어. 소리죠.
Right, right.
다이네 먹게일에 그또 제준담다 요아. 먹게일에 다고 차술롱서도 매워서 타요 말이 되는 먹게일에 하고서 먹게일에 거
Nyurutoya.
뉴르도야도 매워서야 때는 매워서야 용거 요아레스.
사예배추당 사매배추 머르머르 타네 사예배추
다 된다고 생각도 그렇다. 때때때 데레스. 차총화 매워서 새끼자 말해.
Right, right.
슈르도야 요아레 레냐 봐. 다이네 레카시 걸
So Geshe said there's not a universal answer here. It depends upon the unwholesome karma and its intensity. One thing we can say is that it can defeat the karma itself. It cannot defeat the imprint left behind by that karma. So that's the first thing to qualify. In terms of whether it is able to clear the karma completely away or just diminish it, this depends upon the how powerful it is, the karma that was accumulated. Saminga?
야, 처음에가 레트는 다 배배도 좀 맞아요, 요아레스. 다야 요아레스.
요레스. 야. 이네?
이나 녀목이 잡혀 바샤 매봐서 세야 되게 요 말레스.
이네 간소 코레 카시 메퍼소 투기레스 로 카시 메퍼소 투기오마레스 레 체중라 테넬레네
삼삼에 차서 도세요 말레스 된다.
Right.
차총 정도 그래서 알레디 번년부 도지 기보가.
Right.
시라 마시나.
Yeah.
존지세 마토나.
Yeah. Yeah, di commençons sur go ton soin. Karinsana nga karilaus nga chichena nor soin. Le gi chechung la tene jogere doa samsam mepaso tugire samsam mepaso tugiomares.
야 대오르지 레 수지 그자지.
Ine same nga mepaso tubna denele karina mepaso tugires. Di donda mepachagires dene.
메메메 처음에가 제 드리자 레레레레 저주나 매봐서 요아레스. 차총화 매봐서 그래서는 쇼와 도마 매반에서 레 가지나 요아와. 안갈롱도 좀 그래서
Yeah, I see what the problem is. So Geshe, so I was trying to unfold this because we say that, if you read about all of the sort of pep talks about the four opponent powers, it's like this can destroy even one of the 5 actions of immediate retribution, right? Like it gives that. So I was kind of like pushing back on this and saying, but Geshe, like there's nothing heavier than the 5 actions of immediate retribution. So how can we say like it depends upon the intensity of the karma or how much is diminished? So what Geshe is saying is they can, when we reflect and confess an individual karma, even a heavy one with the 4 opponent powers in a very complete way, it can purify that. But the point is, our karmic misdeeds are beginningless because our lifetimes in samsara are beginningless. Therefore, through the 4 opponent powers alone, it's not going to be possible to completely diminish every single one of our negative karmas, right? And so that's an important point. Yeah. In terms of the imprint left behind by the negative karma, we cannot clear that imprint away until we defeat the knowledge obscurations. Yes.
Right.
We also speak, though, right, of we develop the method side and the positive mental qualities connected with that, and especially the wisdom side. When we develop that wisdom fully, then the potentialities or the imprints are still there, but the seeds of those unwholesome karmas are as if burned by fire. And what does it mean if a seed is burned by fire? That it cannot bring forth a sprout. So to say like I've cleansed or purified all of my negative karma, that's a pretty tall order, because if you've had countless lifetimes in samsara, you've had more than countless negative karmas. So it's not that absolutist, right? And also to keep in mind that as students of the Buddha Dharma, purifying negative karma is not our main task. It's important, but it's not the main thing.
그래서 저 그게 다도 시라시알 콜레 바체 뭐요 대지 동아서 돈 알리는 건데 요하레스.
Our main practice is developing our method and wisdom, because when those method and wisdom practices are brought to fruition, not only will we be able to cleanse negative karmas, but we will also be able to cleanse the imprints they leave behind.
다 레레레레 다이들라고 노지 초명아이 레세한다고 다 드니선 저거 주나?
Yeah.
근데 지나 메가서 토그레스.
Yeah. But let's say, for example, when we talk about the utility of the four opponent powers, say that you have accumulated one of the 5 actions of immediate retribution in this lifetime. You recollect this in your mind. You develop regret and cultivate the other 3 powers to eradicate it. That particular karma of immediate retribution can definitely be eradicated. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, no. So thank you, Dave and Greg, for that, because I think we had an interesting discussion. It was a windy discussion, but an interesting one, I think. Are there any other questions?
No, nothing in social media.
All right. Well, then, in that case, we'll say goodbye here, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with us. And I'll just remind you that next Sunday is the most important day of Sagadawa. And so Geshe will give this transmission of the praise to Avalokiteshvara as well as an opportunity to receive or renew the Bodhisattva vows. So maybe we'll see you then. And Geshe said, regardless of whether you can make it, if you have the Bodhisattva vows, renewing them on this most important holy day of Sagadawa is super important. His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, recently really emphasized that. So we just want to share that. Take care. Be happy, everyone.